Now, for more on what's likely to happen next in Gaza, we're joined by Joshua Landis. He heads the Centre for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Joshua, thank you for joining us on the program. Netanyahu said just a moment ago in a press conference that if Israel doesn't go into Rafah, then they will lose the war. Why?
Well, President Netanyahu has set a very high bar, which is destroying Hamas entirely. And there are still the top leaders of Hamas have not been captured. Many of its leadership, in fact, have not been captured. And so Netanyahu is continuing to search for them.
I mean, you know, there is a good chance that all of Hamas will not be eradicated. You know, I mean, they can appear in other countries, they can remorph at another time down the road. At what point do you think Israel will go, okay, this war is over?
Well, that's a big question. And President Biden has asked Netanyahu to not invade Rafah and to stop this fighting. There's serious negotiations, at least what we hope are serious negotiations, led by the director of the CIA to try to come to some kind of ceasefire, whether it's permanent or temporary, exchange of prisoners and so forth, thinking that this could end the war if the prisoners were returned home. But Netanyahu is fighting for his life, his government, his promises to the right wing in Israel that he's going to destroy Hamas. And so he doesn't want to stop this war. If he stops, it's very possible that his government will fall, and he needs to fulfill these promises. I think that's what he wants to do, and he wants to really destroy what's left of Gaza. That's what it seems to be.
And like other global leaders, European Union's foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell is asking Israel not to invade Rafah, that all civilians must be protected in line with international law, and the order by the International Court of Justice must be respected. Is Israel violating international human rights law already, or are these atrocities just a horrendous result of war in the way that Israel sees it?
You know, it's quite clear that these are terrible violations of human rights. Now, whether the United States and the international community will begin to prosecute them in that way, already we've seen certain efforts on the part, for example, the United States has put sanctions on 4 Israeli settlers who've been attacking Palestinians and in one case killing them, where they have not been prosecuted for this in Israel. So the United States is putting a shot across the bow of Israel. Many people see it as way too little, too late, and they don't believe that America will really ratchet this up. But the United States is also investigating whether Israel is misusing American weapons, you know, 2,000-pound bombs falling on civilian housing and so forth. So that's the question. I think the United States is just beginning to, in a sense, threaten Israel, that it could go down that road if Israel continues to do this.
It seems in many ways that this war is kind of between Israel and the US, that the negotiations are no longer between Palestinians or even Arab states and Israel, that really it's about the US and Israel deciding what happens next and how this war is dealt with and what kind of fate Gaza or the state of Palestine is going to become. At what point will the US also be held accountable for the future for these people?
Well, that's a very good question. And we've seen the dilemma between international law and one-on-one negotiations between the PLO and Israel, sponsored by the United States, from the very beginning of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Already way back in the 70s, after the '67 war, the Arabs wanted the UN and international law to play a role in adjudicating the Arab-Israeli conflict. The United States always backed Israel and said, no, it can't be international law because we'll never get peace that way. It has to be an agreement that's agreed between the Arab governments and then the Palestinian, the PLO eventually, and Israel. And of course, the Arabs said that means balance of power. And if there's no international law, and the balance of power is so skewed in favor of Israel, that Israel will get everything it wants. And of course, America will be the presiding power, and America is attached to Israel at the hip. So it cannot be an egalitarian adjudicator. And this has been the dilemma since the very beginning of the Arab-Israeli conflict. America has always kept it out of the hands of the United Nations, and so has Israel. And the Palestinians, of course, have suffered because international law has not been upheld. The United States has vetoed every effort, almost every effort, by the UN to put pressure and vote against Israeli bombing, Israeli settlements, Israeli moving and taking Palestinian land. So, when will the world hold America accountable, you ask? It hasn't so far, and it's been decades.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Joshua Landis, really appreciate your time.